Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes me your producer, KEVO.
And that makes this X's for show. We're doing a special Friday night broadcast. During the week we do comics, we do Drag Race Sundays, but it's so tough. We want to do shows every minute of every day. We always want to be talking about stuff. And we knew that there was going to be a new Tori Amos record. I'm so sorry. We knew there was going to be a new Tori Amos release, but we thought it was going to be a book. And
children's book.
Yeah, children's book that she, co-wrote. And then we hear that it's going to be, there's going to be a music release associated with it earlier this week. And then out of nowhere, it is a 37-minute full-length 9-track record. And I'm really surprised. Not since Mimi released The Immortal Chanteuse or Beyonce decided to drop Lemonade can I think of somebody trying to stealth in a record this hard.
Yeah, I mean, you say earlier this week, but it actually was yesterday. It was. Yeah. I messaged you at 5 that there appeared to be music coming out with this, and somebody had posted the track list. It seems like it was maybe even on Spotify for a second, because the track list that I saw was a Spotify screen cap. And then, it dropped officially at midnight, but yeah, entirely unexpected. And then, we knew the book was coming, and I figured, something we not never talk about, but she did a couple just little interludes for the audiobook for Resistance, and they're so good. And it just always made me think, I was fascinated that she didn't really do a musical project when she did Resistance, although Resistance is kind of a literary project to a musical project. But either way, we knew the book was coming out. I knew we weren't going to do an episode. It's a children's book. It seems really cool, but we don't have children. As cool as
but ask Jonah, we're always trying.
As cool as I think it is, and I do intend to pick it up, and I don't even have any kids in my life to give it to. I don't know any. All my friends' children are older than this now. All my nieces and nephews are older than this now. So as cool as I think this is, and as much as I super support the project, I just I was like, oh, this is just a cool thing. And if it makes her happy, and I know a lot of her fans are of child having age and are parents, so it's all fantastic. And then when I saw that there was going to be music, I sort of thought of all the most lullaby, child-friendly.
I thought it was going to be a ton of Operation Peter Pan.
I mean, Operation Peter Pan even is more of an adult. I was thinking Giant's Rolling Pin. I was thinking which is that song I think is fun, but I was thinking Giant's Rolling Pin. I was thinking Ribbons Undone was another one that came to mind, which is a song that I don't care for, but is a beautiful song from a mother singing about her daughter. And the vibe, when I look at this cover, I think of a song like Ribbons Undone. And so I thought it was going to be songs like that. And I thought that would be great. And I would love it for the intended audience. And you and I'd listen to it, and we'd probably find a thing or two to love. And then that would just be it. It'd be really cute. And then we'd just be on the lookout for the next album.
I'm always so positive on Flickr when it comes up.
Again, that's even a more complex one than I was hoping for. But
Hey, Drew, love that you're out here supporting Tori Amos, who I have to imagine you give exactly -4 materia about. And just super glad that you're out here playing.
Andrew is enough of a metal boy that at the very least I have to imagine that was when I was a kid. That was how I became friends with all the metal boys, was because the only things that they liked outside of metal were Bjork and Tori Amos. And
Andrew, I didn't know that you love Tori. Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Glorious.
Hey,
yeah.
All right.
I would be like, I love Tool and Foo Fighters, and people would be like, oh, then you probably like Tori Amos, and I'd be like, I do.
Yep.
And Color in the Shape, and Boys for Pele, and whatever the Pumpkins record before Melancholy was, and fucking Downward Spiral, which isn't even in my top 5 Reznor records at this point. What an incredible time for Muse.
Yeah, I mean, and you left out all the Bjork there. That's homogenic. That's debut. That's post.
You know why I leave out? Because like Bjork had such a native understanding of beats in a way that her alternative rock contemporaries shunned from fear of the beat corrupting who they were.
Yeah.
And so like you know, and just like Andrew, like for those who don't know, I grew up a punk pop emo boy, going to like surf and skate and Warped Tour every single it was rough. But I had my Tori, my Janet, and my Mimi.
Yeah, I was similar. But I was very big into Bjork. I was very big into Tori. I was very big into Fiona Apple. And then, like I grew up in the ska and the emo scenes, and hung or like was tangent. Like I was in a lot of ska and emo scenes. Everybody would like kind of had claws in the punk scene. And then on the other side of that were the metal guys. And they always really scared me. But then it turned out that they all really liked me, specifically because I knew so much about Bjork and Tori Amos. And that was always very edifying. So, I really thought...
Wait, I just want to double check. Like, The Gathering, like Magic the Gathering? I'm kidding. Sorry.
Was it worth interrupting me for that, do you feel like?
I mean, considering how much we all interrupt each other, and like there's
sure for really good salient points. Was it worth interrupting me for that?
I this being called out is really fun. Next point.
There you go. Yeah. I was expecting something that did not really harken back to the stuff that we're talking about, like the stuff that made the metal boys like Tori Amos, the stuff that made people think she was so complicated and challenging. Because this is music to accompany a children's book. And holy hell, not only did we get 37 minutes of music, which is a lot. It's not quite a full album, but it is a full, very short album, let's say, or a very long EP. But really layered, dense, multifaceted, complicated songs. And lyrics too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see how this winds up playing out with the book itself. I'll be really interested to see how some of the lyrics play out in as far as that. Kevo, you were listening to this in the car with me. How did you feel about it this morning? And then when we listened to it back when we got back to the house?
I think you've covered a lot of the initial reaction already, which is we were not expecting something to be this banger. We were not expecting something that was going to be this much an actual, like, straight up album. I really enjoy it so far, still assimilating it, obviously. It's enough to make you disappointed that it's not longer, that's for sure. Yeah.
And I was really surprised because that first track actually is super soft and lullaby-y, and I almost had trouble hearing it in the car and had to turn it up a little bit. It's not really until that second track that the album really like gets off to a rockin' start.
But I will say immediately in that first track, you hear how complicated it is sonically and what they're doing in terms of like layering in kind of more found sounds and not just, for years it's been always the piano, of course, drums and guitar and bass, but a lot of like prearranged standard rock pieces, and then there will be like a little bit of synthesizer, a little bit of playing with other instruments. Inevitably we're going to get a John Philip Chanel orchestra arrangement on a few tracks. It's all like none of it bad, and she's found a million different ways to take her standard stable of instruments and of arrangements and like the crew that she works with. And they're really, I mean, like there are infinite combinations of just bass, guitar, and drums to make music with. So it's not really a surprise to me that with her preferred bunch of instruments and set of arrangements, she's managed to find a lot to work with and to be very diverse. But there are times where I think to myself, like, one of the reasons I do really get into Bjork is that she will be like, oh yeah, like, you know, we did the mushroom synthesizer for this. Like we plugged the synths into a mushroom for this one. Like, you know, we were playing just household objects. We were slamming cupboards and sampling that. And immediately, even with just knocking, you hear Tori doing a bunch of those types of sounds. And it then gets even more complex from there. But like, even when knocking started, I was like, it really is a very lullaby-y, like this is kind of the idea of what I thought we were getting, but then how it's arranged and how it's layered sonically was not what I was expecting. And from there, the surprises just kind of keep going.
It also reminded me of Night of Hunters in a lot of ways, especially the opening song being a sort of like invocation, almost.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of big complex songs, you know, several of them run longer than 5 minutes. And so there's some movements in there. There's also a lot of complication with the nature of being a children's record, whether it's that it's using nonsense lyrics like Smagic and Cited, or it's the Mermaid Muse Speaks vibe. I feel like there's a lot of room for kind of interpretation. There's a lot of room for this record to be super expressive.
You know what's really wild that I found out today as I was researching this? Mermaid Muse is not just backwards. I don't know what they did to it vocally processing it, but when you play it backwards, it's not just her singing backwards, which I found really just exciting and cool.
I love that.
Yeah, no, that's I actually sort of assumed it was kind of like
yeah, me too.
Oh, I mean, I assumed it was kind of like nonsensy.
Oh.
But that is really fun. I really like that there is like a little more going on there.
We got Mild Rumpus says Mermaid Muse Speaks is wild. I completely agree. That was, you know, I did at first I was like, oh, like I love that she's doing this, but like, yay, we're making use of the reverse sound effect. I did not pick up on that it was so much more than that. And when, I mean, like, I still really liked what she was doing with the vocal there. And like the effect that what I thought was just reversing the vocal was giving to the track. But then when I realized it was more than that, I was kind of impressed on a lot of different levels.
Yeah. You know, it was it's really exciting too, because she manages to cover a lot of different genres in just 37 minutes.
Yeah.
I also thought it was really interesting that she used so many nonsense lyrics. There's a lot of plinky plink and a lot of playfulness, and that's, I feel like, something that's usually reserved for Tori Live, so it's really interesting to hear it on a record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those things that I thought maybe was going to bother me, and then I found myself like really, really into it.
And you know, I think it's really funny because I'm going to be looking out for how these connect to the book itself. How much of this is like verbatim? How much of this is they're literally in a fairy workshop? Then they are literally at an insect ballet. They are literally in a woman named Anna's bakery.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. Part of me is like, part of me doesn't even want to know, because again, like I don't feel like the children's book is for me, and it's not something I'm going to really get to engage with. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm kind of like overselling the degree to which like a children's book or underselling the degree to which a children's book could heal my soul if it's like by Tori Amos and I read it and it's all about like being inspired by the muses. But I will say, having no connection to any of the material and hearing a lot of these lyrics and seeing a lot of these like even just like Insect Ballet, I will be really curious to know if that's like something they go experience visually in the book. But also, man, it's just really cool. Like, it evokes beautiful imagery in the song. And same thing, Anna's Bakery, you know, again, when I saw it on the track list, I was like, oh, Giant's Rolling Pin, here we go. And it's weirdly like Giant's Rolling Pin is a very layered song lyrically about like, you know, the US government taking more of a slice of the pie than they ought to. And, you know, it's about counterintelligence and spying and all of these things that the song is just very silly. And, you know, it's, I always say it's her Octopus's Garden. And it has that sonic feel to it too. It's a very like sing-songy, silly song. Anna's Bakery is actually pretty like, you know, it's metaphorical as well, but it has a lot of like, she uses Red Velvet as the bass. Like, it is a song about a bakery, and yet the song itself feels so mature and so complicated.
You know, I'm in the same category as you, Mild Rumpus. I'm really disappointed that I missed out on the B&N Union Square event. I feel like I went to get tickets within minutes of them being released and announced as on sale, and they were immediately gone, which was such a bummer. But, you know, I feel like it's an interesting thing because right around the time that she did Tori Amos Piece by Piece with Ann Powers, there was an event at the 92nd Street Y, and I got tickets for it, not knowing what it was going to be. And then they said there would be no music and it would just be 30 minutes. And so even though I had tickets, it was one of those things where it would have been really complicated to get to. So I wound up selling the tickets. People got to go. It was great. But I feel like it's really always an interesting experience when you have an opportunity to see someone like a musician not doing music. It really kind of changes the conversation on meeting them and experiencing them. You know, and it's sort of like even the nature of like, you know, we camped out on a street in Brooklyn to meet her and like literally slept like on cold pavement. And it turns out realistically, we could have gotten there at 5 a.m. and been just as fine. But you never know. And I think that's even a little bit where I underestimated the demand on this. Because the 92nd Street Y show, you could have gotten tickets till the very last second. So it's really interesting.
I'm curious to see if there's going to be other events as well.
And what will come of this in general going forward. Like, I'm still disappointed I haven't gotten more out of Light Princess. So this might just be this. We might be super excited about this album and it might just be attached to this book.
Yeah, and you know, that would be totally fine with me. I love sort of like a flash in the pan moment, like this just being special for what it is. And I can imagine that especially like a book tour is sort of difficult financially to justify, particularly again for a children's book. But I'm very curious because there is this album aspect to it. If there is, you know, as I was during my second listen to this, I was sort of like, oh, this could make a really cool like show of literally just playing this, like doing a small intimate venue show of like 15 dates where she would just like play this all the way through, because it's 37 minutes long. If you added like a little room for fanfare, you could probably bump it out to a solid hour, put it in a little bit more of an intimate venue. I don't know, it could be a really interesting, you know, diversion from the way she typically does tours. And you know, also like this record really sounds like where her voice is at now. which there are ways in which I don't want that to sound like a bad thing, because it's not bad, but it is, her voice is in a really different place, and playing your Cornflake Girls and your, you know, some of her biggest hits is definitely, the songs are changing because the voice is changing, but these are all really written for exactly where she is. And I don't know, I would just be really curious to hear them all live.
I think it's also really interesting that this is probably going to be an album like Midwinter Graces and Night of Hunters, where I feel like the songs are very frequently kept to a very specific series of performances, if at all. I think that there is also a lot to be said for the fact that there are so many Tosh songs we've never heard live, because she doesn't do them because Tosh doesn't get up on stage. She's too busy being a lawyer or something, and super excited. Please go out there and save the world through law, not through song. Everybody's got a gift. But I feel like the limitation on some of the choices she winds up with her catalog is always really interesting, because as much as I loved it, I thought Native Invader was filled with songs that I didn't know that she could still comfortably sing, like Reindeer King. Some of the lilt in that is just a little higher than I feel she's necessarily comfortable with. And I feel like there's something to be said about the fact that this record seems really focused on a very comfortable place in her vocal range. Specifically, I think of like Spies and how cool Spies was, and how it had this really unusual current for her sonically. And I think about a comparative piece on a previous record, like Up the Creek, and how Up the Creek does have sort of extreme vocals for where she's at now, but Spies maybe doesn't. And I think about Insect Ballet, and how Insect Ballet has a very simple attitude that comes back to Prime. It just sort of does at the Insect Ballet EA, and it's just this natural thing. And so I feel like she's definitely being more reasonable about where she's at vocally.
I really see that, and I think my biggest question now is like, what does she want to do with that, particularly in terms of touring? Because you're absolutely right, like she has still, even into Ocean to Ocean, has been ambitious with her voice in a way that, like, in the studio, of course, it's easy to tune things and get where you need to be if you're not quite there. But then live, that's going to be a really different experience to try and hit those notes and try and get through that performance. This all feels like it's so in her wheelhouse. And yeah, like I really agree with you that like Night of Hunters, this is probably not going to be one that we get a lot of these tracks very often as she tours in the future. But I'm really curious to see if there will be any, like, do we get the entire performance live even once? I would be so curious to hear her do these songs live.
And speaking of that, I just want to say the Mild Rumpus, KEVO had a really great solution for this. Rather than name him, just replace Neil with Tosh.
That was such a revelation, though, as we were talking about that. I realized, like, she relies so much less heavily on references to him than he does on her. So yeah, I think she'll be fine. I think she can probably figure it out. Like, you spotted a Wizard of Oz reference, and I think general culture like that is so much more important to her than just Neil.
And the other thing I think is that this reclaimed picture books for her. There's a relationship she has with artistry and visual representations of herself. She's kind of a look queen, but she's not a look queen necessarily in the way you would envision it, because her looks are so considered. Like, she's kind of more of a bedroom queen than she is like a cackety cack queen sometimes. because the outfits are always, she gets into it once and she doesn't necessarily have the ability to get into it again.
Yeah.
I think this the character from Christmas Tide, the focus on artistry that really began with, I think, Strange Little Girls, because there was, my Aunt Jeannie, God rest my Aunt Jeannie's soul, and by God rest it, I mean God is like, give it a rest. My
Please
Aunt
help.
Jeannie, we truly was a very complicated woman, and she, just to understand, she was like diagnosed with emphysema, stopped smoking. The next day she wound up in the emergency room having trouble breathing, and the ER doc asked if she smoked and she said no. That is the woman we're talking about here. One time I remember showing her the cover of To Venus and Back. It had been out maybe 8 months, and my cousin Jenny, who is her daughter, is just, so weird story. My Aunt Jeannie is my grandmother's youngest sister, so she's actually like, her daughter is really close in age to me and my sister. And my cousin Jenny also loved Tori Amos, and I got To Venus and Back and I showed it to my Aunt Jeannie, and my Aunt Jeannie looks at it once and just goes, she's just not concerned with the fact that she's not a looker, is she? And I'm like, this is the most beautiful she's ever looked. What are you saying? And she was like, and so I have this really clear image that my Aunt Jeannie, who,
she wasn't that concerned either.
thank you.
Yep.
And my Aunt Jeannie, even thought this woman was homely, which shocked me because I didn't think she was homely at all. I just couldn't see that. So she becomes this look queen. She becomes this over the top exaggeration of visual identity, and we start to branch away from that into visualettes with things like the Road Chronicles, and then we hit this apex with Unrepentant Geraldines, where it's like this tipping point, and suddenly it's this sacrifice of the identity of visualization of her physical self, and it's visualization of single frames of artistry. And so we go to Unrepentant Geraldines, where it's all about paintings and iterants of paintings, and there's this exceptional detachment in her visualization in Native Invader. And it's really fascinating that this really does feel like she is trying to continue to reclaim artistic representations of herself in a spectacular way.
Yeah, that's, I have to chew on that for a little while, but you're absolutely right. I mean, like, and if nothing else, she has really shown herself to be a committed project queen. It's not just the eras that she goes into with the albums. It is things like doing comic book tattoo. It's things like, like this book. And it feels more than just a branding exercise and an attempt to make merchandise and to claim a piece of any particular pie for herself. But it does feel really important that she be able to, very conscientiously shape not just her artistic output, but how that output really is a reflection of her. And she seems to be really also like very at peace with letting it go once it's out there. Like once we have it and you kind of can't do anything to make the audience change how they view you. She does not seem obsessed with making sure that we see the record the way she wanted it to be seen, but she seems really focused on putting it out dialed in the best that she can to the way she wants it to be. And I don't take for granted that all artists do that. Like as a kind of example of somebody else who I love who does something similar, but I think approaches it in a really different way, it would be Fiona Apple, who puts out incredible records, but I think doesn't so tightly control every aspect of the experience of the record being created and being launched into the world.
And I think that has to do with the attitude of the performer and the performance. I think Tori has this musical theater background where I feel like she is aware that when you step into her theater, it's this moment. I know you appropriately dog me for loving Coldplay for too long, but like I think about the tour for, I want to say it's Milo Xylo, that's a giant carnival. And how from the moment you walk into the theater, you're literally no longer in a theater. That's why it could only be housed at amphitheaters and stadiums. I think it's Milo Xylo. And with Tori, especially once you sort of got past the kind of Lollapaloozification of everything in the 90s for her shows, where everything looked very, Matt Pinfield could tell you how many exact inches apart the piano was from the drum set. And you get into this period where she transcended that identity. I think probably for the first time truly with Strange Little Tour. And then, she continues the process. And I feel like there's this question of, was it just facade? Was it just, identity for a moment when you get to a lot of pianos, and a lot of pianos kind of breaks the mold on the two legs of the Scarlet's Walk tour, because the On Scarlet's Walk tour, had the very specific staging, the very specific light and color work, the placement of the banner, where Lizard Lounge went. Like, it was all very considered. It was like a Broadway show in that regard, and then you get to a lot of pianos and it's a little bit more madness because you're opening Ben Folds. And Andrew, I love that. I do wear knit hats because Andrew, hold on. You must be having a hell of a moment, Andrew, because I hear you bring up Sally's song in the comments. I do. And I see you mention Fiona Apple's version of Sally's song. I do. And I also know, though, that you are 2/3 Amy Lee references the way I am 2/3 Guardian Force. And so I am struggled to know which version you prefer, Fiona Apple's or Amy Lee's.
I also wanted to point out that Fiona Apple's is not available on any streaming service, and it is ruining all of my Halloween mixes. It is, of course, available on YouTube Music because somebody has done some weird MV or like lyric.
No, but it's that the 10th or 15th anniversary album version. That album
not available
streaming,
not available anywhere.
That surprises me because it's like got a whole bunch of other ones. It's Fall Out Boy, it's Panic.
I think
one
those are available.
One gets the other.
I think those are available, but not Sally's song. I don't know. I don't know if it's a like Fiona Apple contractual thing.
Yeah,
but it drives me very mad. There's also the Billie Eilish version to consider.
Oh,
well, of note, since that version will be sitting there in limbo, Andrew says that Amy Lee's version is superior because he's a huge Evanescence fan. I'm not recently gay because I always thought that it was what's her name, Catherine O'Hara song. So, not recently gay. But so I to get back to the thing I savagely lost myself in. She got to this point of iterative character, and so then she takes this big step away, and we get to Tales of a Librarian. And KEVO, would you mind putting up that beautiful timeline graphic you created for us?
Oh, that you worked so hard on? Hell yeah.
Thanks. We get to the point where she begins creating this Tales of a Librarian identity. And my most formative years, Team Fiona from Mild Rumpus. I think I just want you to know that I appreciate your Rumpus room. Hopefully you get anybody out there gets the reference. It's a reference to an early version of Carousel of Progress.
Oh, it's been too long since we've gone on Carousel. That's why I didn't get it.
It's always Dunstan checks in with me. So you get to this point, if you would mind jumping over to the other side, the top list. Perfect. Thank you so much. Right around here, the character starts to become so significant and so much bigger than the idea of Tori herself, that the fact that she's moved to behind animated characters feels so right. I am actually surprised there aren't visualizettes. Great. That's just I quit.
No, visualizers. I get you though. She loves.
I would
weird
trademark that
fancy crap
term.
like that.
Visualizettes is we can make gold on that.
Okay.
But so I think the idea that she's moved so completely behind the character is, I think it's just the next step, because she really has become so about like the performance identity. I think about how she became Scarlet for Scarlet's Walk, and then the Beekeeper is it's an aporist, really, if anything, but it's still really about being I don't know, your own garden captain or something. I don't get Beekeeper. I hate Beekeeper. It is I genuinely don't like it. It's tough because, like, I was thinking at the start of the episode that it would be really fun to do Tori Amos tier maker, and we could, rate, Little Earthquakes, the Little Earthquakes B-sides, not like track by track, but record. And I was thinking I'd have to give something a Beekeeper. It's like when I knew that someone was going to die at the end of the 4th season of Magicians, and I just prayed every night that it would be Fen.
You did.
Prayed every night. They would take Fen.
And then we would tell her as an incest ghost on Ghost Whisperer.
And then, No,
she was alive. My bad.
Right. No, she was the living incest. So, but if I could give somebody the D, it would be the Beekeeper.
Right.
I think that's fair. I mean, and you're right. Like, if we're going to do a tier maker, something's got to get a D. And I ultimately do, I don't know. I also 20 years. Been 20 years since the Beekeeper. Absolutely wild. Yeah, I mean, something's got to be the worst thing. There's really redeeming moments in Beekeeper. Insane that, to me, the best song on that album is the one B-side. I think Garlands is a great track.
Garlands is a great track, but the best track on the Beekeeper is Marys of the Sea.
Actually, that's true. That's fair.
I mean, and I let me before I continue to be rude, I do want to say there is no the best track on any record. Everybody gets to pick their own favorite track. And I by no means mean to say that Garlands isn't spectacular.
No, but you actually did remind me. Like, I really fell in love with Garlands doing that re-listen that I did, where I always kind of knew Mary's was good. Actually, what really happened was years ago, when I was like, no, nothing on the Beekeeper is good. Scorched, salt the earth that it was grown upon and never returned to it. You were like, no, actually, there's a few good tracks. You're not giving Marys of the Sea enough of a chance. And I remember I was driving back from your house. I was driving back to Maine from your house one time. And I was like, okay, like, you gave me like 4 tracks in particular. And I was like, I'm going to like really fucking listen to these. And I was absolutely blown away by Marys of the Sea. And then when I saw her in Boston, during, I went down we did a bunch of shows together, and then I went up to Boston, and I went back to Jersey for another one with you. When I saw her in Boston, I could hear the sound check because she was playing in an open air venue, and I just walked outside the venue, and she played Marys of the Sea, and I was like, oh, we're getting a fucking banger tonight. And then the show came and she played Martha's Foolish Ginger, which was actually so good for a track I do not like. I'm a bit of a convert, but like the live version really was so good. But yeah, when I was doing my re-listen, Garland's really stood out to me, but you are 100% right that Marys of the Sea is just a phenomenal track.
I have a couple of really weird memories about the Beekeeper, because the Beekeeper came out at a really significant moment in my life where I made a decision to like, funny story. This is the longest I've ever been like, so as Tori is Myra Ellen becomes Tori, I was person before I was NICO. My name is legally, Nicholas, like, and it's a good Greek boy. What's up? But like, NICO is like, adult identity. And Beekeeper came out at this time where like everything in my life was changing, and like one of the things that Beekeeper has going for it is because I think, I say everything in my life was changing, but everything in the universe was changing. 2005 is such a point of upheaval for pop culture identity, especially, 2005 is right at that moment where, in a Paley definition, the golden age of television starts with The Sopranos and ends with the premiere of Fuller House. That is just like a Paley definition. I'm saying like Bronze Age starts with Giant Size and ends with X-Men #1. Like, I'm just being technical. And within that scope of conversation, just that particular definition, because there's 1,000 schools of thought, and I'm not saying that one is right, but within that scope of definition, 2005 represented the point at which the children that had learned from the adults began producing, right? So like The Sopranos took years to germinate into the birth of Grey's Anatomy, Desperate Housewives, and Lost, this trifecta, along with things like House and Veronica Mars that would come on to define pop culture. The Office, they all started within the same like 13-month period, and they are defining of societal conversation. And The Beekeeper came out in this, stop, hey, what's that sound? Did you guys see Vietnam on the TVs going down kind of way? And the guy I was dating at the time, who I had absolutely no reason to subject to so much Tori Amos, I knew that all he really liked was dance music. And I'm so glad that as adults, I get to run past him drunk at Bob the Drag Queen shows. But he really liked Martha's Foolish Ginger. And I remember thinking, he does, of course, because it doesn't really sound like a Tori Amos song. It really doesn't. It sounds like the softer side of Enya. Like it's the song that the female protagonist listens to as she comes to realize something in the made-for-TV movie. And then conversely, Parasol is a little too 2005 hip-hop influenced in a way that sonically does not fit the record it is on in any way. And it should not have been the opening track of an album that could not deliver 1 second of that in a way that Knocking reminds me of. Knocking is a lullaby, and after I got through 2 minutes of it, I was like, great, I'm in for a lovely album of lullabies. And then you get to the Fairy Workshop, and it is not going to be an album of lullabies, but in a way that is the opposite of The Beekeeper 20 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I see exactly what you're saying. And that is sort of the blessing and curse of Tori, I guess. Insofar as, like, when she gives you diversity, she sometimes has this through line of energy and spirit and vibe and theme where, like, yeah, you get a Knocking, and somehow every track between Spike's Lament and Knocking is weaving together, even though they're all really distinct nodes that you can't layer one on top of the other and just be like, see, they fit perfectly. But the other side of that is, she kept describing Beekeeper like a garden, like a greenhouse, like here's this plant, here's that plant. And it doesn't feel like a garden that you want, it doesn't feel like Emily Gilmore's garden, which is just curated perfectly, and every aspect of it is thought out and planted to create a holistic experience. The Beekeeper as a garden was just kind of a lady who grabbed a bunch of seeds and threw them out there, and then that was the garden. Some of the plants are absolutely beautiful, but they don't all fit. It doesn't all go together. And it still has that Tori diversity. Yeah, you're right. Like Parasol has a very hip hop influence, and you would think that would go with the R&B and gospel influence of Sweet the Sting, but it absolutely doesn't. And then of course, having Power of Orange Knickers in the beginning of that first section isn't doing anybody else any favors. Sleeps with Butterflies is actually, like, to me, peak soft rock pop record artistry. Like it's really somebody trying to deliver all aspects of like still having integrity, but creating something that is so accessible and beautiful. But because of where it fits on the album and because of what the rest of the tracks are and what it's doing, it does come off as really saccharine and a little bit almost even condescending in some ways. And it doesn't help that it's got a similar energy to Ribbons Undone. I don't know. It's just weird. And all of the tracks I can kind of find a way to love individually and spend some time with, but I don't get into them as a whole. And it's almost sort of the opposite with this record where like today, just because we've had this for less than 24 hours, I've been trying to like stop and love each track individually. The only track I have really managed to listen to more than 3 times is Spike's Lament. That's my favorite song on the album. Why? Because it has a banger horn section and it sounds like it should be in a Blues Brothers movie. It is really good. But the rest of them I haven't really, because every time I start to listen to one, I just want to listen to the whole album again. And so I just do that instead. And not that that's any kind of problem. That's not a critique. It's just very funny that like with Beekeeper, I can't ever pull it together as a whole. And with this, I'm like, I'm having to work hard to separate each individual moment.
And I think part of that has to do with how many of the tracks move fluidly throughout 2 and 3 minutes. I think I found a lot of the energy on this record one where I had to look at the track list as I live on my smartwatch, and so I just as I've got music playing, tap it, and as I'm running, I'm like, okay, it's the same song but it sounds totally different. What? And the last time I really feel like I had that relationship was Unrepentant Geraldines and Vicar's Wife. I don't think anything did that really. I'm looking at the wall because I have a beautiful record of multicolored Tori. I have a beautiful wall of multicolored Tori records. Because Tori has a fascination with colored vinyl that I really appreciate aesthetically. But there's a sort of necessity to paying attention to this record or surrendering to the soundscape of it. Kevo, how are you feeling?
I hear what you're saying on that, but I think for what it is, not just being 9 tracks, but being this storybook, it needs such a variety from track to track. It's not whether purposely or not, it's emulating that Disney soundtrack style. It's just the thing that you need for a shorter children's targeted, because at the very end of the day, whether we agree that it genuinely works for children or not, that's not for us to say. I used to say the same thing about Joanne's books. By the 7th book, when you've got a snake jumping out of a dead person's body, is that a children's book? I don't think so, but it's still marketed as one. So whether we agree with this being a children's album or not, it's what she's saying it is, and that is a thought and a concern when it comes to that style of album, is making sure that you have that variety from track to track.
Well, and I think that's a bit where we see the near just like Jesse James-esque infusion into the middle of this record.
Skyboy loved that, didn't he?
And I hear where for TK it's very Scott, and I agree with him for certain. The production leans into elements of I guess Southern California Americana, because there's a fascinating relationship that Tori has with the necessity of regionalism and creating districting. She really, through her music, through her geography, through her conversation of Andrew, I finally figured out what you meant by "you want to see that wall." Wink, wink. Text me later. But she really creates physical regional zone. She creates space in that way. And there's the Northeast. And I really feel like that's focused around her understanding of DC, Maryland, and New York, the three places she really identified with as home. Though, of course, her love of Boston, her love of, the kind of like Connecticut, Maine, New England family of areas. She has so many shows available from there in her like 50 live shows. And I think there's like 2 shows from New Jersey ever. Kevo, what you got?
I really wonder what she would think of Steven Universe. She's a Delmarva girl. So I really wonder, especially with how kooky and ethereal it is, maybe she's never even heard of it in her life. But that's one of those things that it feels like she would at least, be aware of and giggle, if not actually have some kind of interest in. And the fact that, like you said, she's a Maryland girl, that really struck a chord with me just now thinking about that. And associated with this.
Yeah. And I think in that way, she sort of identifies all things West as Southern California or country. And I feel like Spike's Lament is so country. And it's hard for me, though, not to address the fact that this is part of being a Tori fan. I know my Chem fans are convinced that the silence between words is sometimes uniquely trying to communicate a message, and it's a special silence, and there's actually a special like air that was breathed during that silence, and it's part of the air from another song's silence. And
I absolutely love what you're doing here. Please continue this monologue.
And it is truly what they know is there. And I'm never gonna fight with you on it. I'm never gonna give you a hard time. I think it is
mostly because I'm scared.
Yeah, I think it's delusional. I think the Black Parade is one of those things that is just it is a mosh step away from a goose step, and I can't even imagine it. But I love the way that this idea of Tori did canon for songs created a world where it was easier for artists, not because she obviously wasn't the first person and she isn't the only person, but her song canon made it easier for other people to have song canon. She had barbs before there were barbs. She had dolls before there were dolls. And this motif of laments actually did occur earlier in her work. And the previous lament is Trouble's Lament from Unrepentant Geraldines, which is such a seminal, significant record for her canon. It's so fascinating the way Unrepentant Geraldines would go on to dictate. Unrepentant Geraldines acts as a new Little Earthquakes. Just sort of the way there's something Pele-esque about the Scarlet's era. I really think there is something Earthquakes about Unrepentant Geraldines. God, I was a twink once, and it was really
you were
exciting.
like a twonk, but you're,
It's like
hunk now, like
He-Man. It's 168 on a 6'1". That's terrible.
But I found him.
Hey, thank you. That's a Rough Trade in Brooklyn. It's in Williamsburg, I think, as opposed to Busch Gardens, which is in Colonial Williamsburg. Even I think that joke is too stupid to get away with.
No, I like that one.
Oh my God, Brooklyn Made closed.
Did they really?
They closed with 1 day's notice.
Period?
Everything is closing with 1 day's notice.
No further details to be given. Brooklyn Made is just shut down permanently.
I wonder if there is a thing. I mean, to respond very quickly to your point or to support it, like there's a song on the album called 29 Years that is about what's been going on since Little Earthquakes. You've been doing this for 29 years. And so there is this sort of cleansing, like, and now we're here. We were doing all of that. And now, you know, we've gone from like being right at that point before motherhood and like definitely at total adult womanhood, but still with like so much to learn and grow into. And we spent 29 years doing that. And now, like, we never stop growing or learning, but now we kind of are the wise older person that we were sort of aspiring to become 29 years ago, and a whole new song cycle begins. And we do get, you know, like Native Invader is not Under the Pink to Unrepentant Geraldine's Little Earthquakes, but it is sort of the next step on a new song cycle journey and a new album cycle journey, where she's taking, you know, it was a lot of saying goodbye to the last 29 years and saying hello to the next 29 years. And as Under the Pink was about, you know, as Little Earthquakes was about kind of like introducing Tori and like establishing all the stuff that she was into, Under the Pink was about really delving into a few specific issues about womanhood. And Native Invader is about delving into a few really specific issues, kind of more about the environment and nature and politics. But it does have that sort of sophomore album feel to it compared to Unrepentant Geraldine's. And then when we get to Ocean, again, that's not Boys for Pele 2.0, but it is where she starts to really play around with different ambitions in a way that she did on her third album. So I don't know. I mean, like, there's really something to be said for like the cycles that she has gone through.
And I think it's even reflective in earlier work, because I think there's ways you can see from the Choir Girl Hotel as a refocusing of that same agenda that she has in Little Earthquakes that comes back around again in Unrepentant Geraldine's. You know, I do actually want to say, just for one moment, there's a guy out there, I feel so terrible. The guy who took all of those photos, because obviously KEVO and I are in the photos. I'll never forget him.
No, that was a great night.
It was a great night. He was like, there's no other way to, I don't want to say his real name, but his last name was the name of a member of a band, the band Kitty. And he looked exactly like Phil Jimenez's younger brother, and wore this like jacket that was both trying too hard and also actually worked for him. And I feel so bad.
Genuinely now, like 10, 11 years later, I feel like I would describe him as early Alyssa Edwards out of drag.
I don't know that I see it, but I will go through the photos. But I want to say I feel so bad because this guy took all these photos and I never replied to his email, because it was a time in my life where I was even more annoying than now. So I didn't say thank you. So just saying out there, Tony, I don't think you look like Alyssa Edwards out of drag unless that works for you. And then I'm cheering it on. But I appreciate that this is something that is true of the general idea of Tori Amos. Like I mentioned earlier this episode, I also really love Mariah Carey and Janet Jackson. And as much as there is fan community for those artists, I feel like it's a little bit more about like worshiping a star. And like, as somebody who's in those fandoms, I mean this, like, it's about like, oh wow, aren't Janet and Mariah like Quens? But like, there's a certain convocation to Tori Amos. There's a certain like calling to it, where everybody in the fandom feels a little bit more like a family, feels a little bit more like something kind of like spiritually connected, almost in a way that is not meant to sound so uncomfortable. And so I remember like in that meet and greet line, and I've met plenty of people. We met at the same venue. We met Kesha a year later. It's not like that. We just met the girls of Drag Race Live, and Peppermint was in the meet and greet line with us. And that group had less camaraderie than the Tori Amos meet and greet line. And so, like, it's just, you had a one-of-a-kind opportunity where one of the celebrities in the room is actually just in the room loving the same celebrities as you, and she's letting you be part of that experience with her. And that was less magical to the fans of Drag Race than just meeting Tori Normsies was for Tori fans. And there's something so unique about that relationship. Yes. So Janet, I see Mild Rumpus, Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. I'm just going to do it one more time because February is almost over. I was born February 4th, 1986. Control came out February 4th, 1986. And so now I'd like to think I've got a lot of it. I love Janet too much. I have a selection of Kesha covers. Andrew, let's talk. And yes, I'm also laughing Mild Rumpus, whatever the Lola's too.
Nice.
Okay, well, it's still on me. So
I thought you still had stuff you were saying.
Yeah, you were in the middle of stuff, and
I thought you took a break to say hi to Mild Rumpus,
yeah.
but I wasn't. You were on a roll.
I've had a one-of-a-kind week, and I'm very tired. I think one of the things that is so cool about this record is that it is explicitly itself. One of the things that we talk a lot about when we talk about the French, I don't want to say franchising, because like you're not franchising an artist. It's like the franchiseification. I don't even know how to refer to it, but like when an artist takes a singular project and they explode it across multiple media formats, right? There's this element of dilution. There's this element of nothing really has a vibe or a feel. And so I understand why when a movie comes out, the book that the novelization is going to have stuff that's not in the movie that probably won't be canon as of the next movie. I understand that the video game adaptation is going to have tons of stupid shit because they don't have the video game rights to 6 people that are in the movie. Fine, I don't care. But with something like this, I would expect a lot of these songs to be kind of ho-humsy. And one of the things that this record was for my sake was actually kind of braver than Ocean to Ocean. Ocean to Ocean was very cool, but I even remember right at the time, and TK, you'll have to remind me its name, but I know Bjork released an album right around the same time, Ocean to Ocean, Utopia, thank you. And that was far more brave than what Ocean to Ocean covered, and we even commented on that at the time. And now here's this record, and I think this is braver than Ocean to Ocean. It certainly doesn't mean Ocean to Ocean isn't a great record, but this shows that there's a little bit more unique voice in the tank.
I agree on all fronts. I think I only felt a little bit let down because Speaking with Trees was actually for where we were post-COVID. And again, I think like where we were, if you're an old school Tori Amos fan, if you've been doing this since the 90s, there's a degree to which the grief that Tori is speaking about in Speaking with Trees is just like the grief that you accumulate when you grow up and just people die, bad stuff happens. You just are in grief a lot of the time. And Speaking with Trees felt like a very brave first single, or like an inventive way to write a rock single that would explicitly be like, hey, I've just been sad, and this is what I'm doing to address that. And then the rest of the record didn't quite have as many moments, although it did have, Flowers Burn to Gold. It had a lot of really interesting moments, maybe not brave moments, but ones that I really reflected on a lot and gave me a lot to think about. This does really musically, sonically, even lyrically feel brave in that way where, like, some of these songs aren't I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Spike's Lament and Reindeer King are saying basically the same thing. And Reindeer King's refrain has got to get you back to you, and Spike's Lament has the refrain of, I had it pulled up. There's a lot of take you back to when having fun beat winning them trophies every day. Like there's a lot of like, let's go back to that thing that made us happy in a lot of what Tori writes. And so like, I think the format is one of the things, the form and the format is one of the things that's really brave. But I will say, bringing up Bjork, I was thinking today about like, this feels like the first record in a hot minute where Tori is really keeping up with Bjork in terms of playing around with sonic structures in an experimental way. I think Bjork experiments a lot, and the experiments are, let's say, a failure. Like they don't hit. They're not a failure, but they don't hit. And Tori doesn't experiment as much, but she'll create some really substantial stuff on a record of 10 songs. You can feel like they're reliable in her later era, where Bjork, they're not always reliable. They're not always accessible. They're not always, the experiment didn't always do, I think, maybe what she intended. But there is a real bravery there, and there's a real complexity there. And I love those things. I think one of the things I was really noticing with this record is Tori really commits to a level of expression and communication in her lyrics that I'm realizing now that Bjork gets a lot of hype for these very beautiful, abstract word pictures that she creates. But if you really sit and think about it, like, is she actually saying anything? Like, what are we talking about here? Is this like, this is not like, because Tori will write a lyric where it's just like, oh, that sounds like a bunch of nonsense words, but it evokes an image that a listener can interpret 8 different ways. Like she said something that you in your grief might say, oh, this represents how sad I am. But if you're in love, you can hear that same lyric and go like, for me, this is how in love I am. And sometimes with Bjork lyrics, especially later stuff, I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're in love, if you're sad, or if you're eating a sandwich. This isn't saying anything. This is just the words that she is singing, because she has this insane Bjork voice, and it's got to be on every track, to the point that like she, like Sigur Rós, has a lot of just vocalizations. Sigur Rós calls it Hopelandic, but it's a language of not real words, because they just want to sing. They just want to belt out. But it gets to a point where, there's so many Bjork songs in which the lyric is not an actual word. It's just her having a singing moment. And Tori and the Muses was where I had this moment of like, Tori, no matter what, gives you lyrically some meat. And regardless of whether that might be the meat that you want, there's something to chew on there. And sometimes Bjork gives you like molecular gastronomy, where you're like, this is so cool. I have no idea how you did this, but ultimately I came for a salad and I just got a bubble filled with smoke that I inhaled for my appetizer.
I think, to even put it crassly, Tori is good at memeable language. She's good at things you want to quote. There's already,
I think, in the Morrisonian sense of memeable, yeah.
Yeah, there are several lyrics from this already that we've said are going to be stuck in our heads that we're going to be saying. And she is very good at that type of language.
One of the things that stands out in that conversation is that artistry takes a lot of liberties with lyrics. It's something that I think about with writing musicals the same way Tori did, though Tori didn't write the lyrics and book of the musical. She wrote the music, the vocals, and lyrics with help from Samuel Adamson, I believe. Like he had input on the lyrics as a result of writing the book. And that only matters because Tori once said of Great Expectations, and I forget the name of the composer she worked with on Finn and Paradise Perditu. Also, to anyone who met me at 17 years old as an angry, bitchy 17-year-old online dom on gay.com with the username Finn Siren, God, am I sorry. But so she works
Patrick
with...
Doyle.
Thank you, Patrick Doyle. I really apprient that. Thank
So
you.
you're saying that was your name on gay.com?
So she works with another person here, and she creates this really excellent lyrical structure. Everything has got this scansion that's to fucking die for, and we get to I would even say, things that were constructed after The Light Princess, just time-wise. The work on Unrepentant Geraldines probably had to come in the later cycle of Light Princess, just based on how long it takes to get things onto a stage. And things like Giant's Rolling Pin, not a bad song, but just maybe a little too lyrically obvious, a little too lyrically like on the nose, just like saying what a person is doing in a musical-esque way. But I think about what I'm trading that for, or I'm trading that in against, and it's nonsense occasionally, like "Father, I killed my monkey," and I defend that lyric all the time because as somebody who writes musicals, I'm working on something right now, and I shared this lyric with like 11 people, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't know why nobody stood up and applauded. I was like, you're all so fucking lame. I don't even want to fucking deal with you. I am over here doing Fergie high note, no cartwheels. And you are all sitting at home on your couch like you're still watching Snick. And
walk on out, Heidi in closet.
I was not having the moment. You know what I mean? Truly, it was a Heidi moment. I was having a Heidi moment.
Fuck y'all, I'm out of here.
And I think about the fact that there has been so much critical attack on Tori's lyrics of late. But I think back to USA Today in their review of From the Choir Girl Hotel wrote, Tori should know better than the lyric, "Why can't my balloon stay up in a perfectly windy sky?" And I feel like, TK, you pointed out so much of the lyricism of this is its own artistry, even the things that are nonsense. But what is saying yes said 16 times in a song? I use "and I said" in all of my songs because "and I" is a Mariah Carey thing, and "yes said" is a Tori Amos thing, and so "and I said" gives me everything I need in all of my songs. I mean, like literally, I whip it. I feel that passionately about it. But the nature of the nonsense is even things like she says things like "the Cloud Riders," and then years later we get a song called "The Cloud Riders." And I feel like we are defined by the nonsense. I was talking about it with KEVO and Tori Sheehan, not Amos. And I referred to it as we were working on a project together last night. I referred to it as my nonsense batter that KEVO is able to turn into story waffles. And it's really where Tori lets her fans take the batter and make the waffles.
That's an interesting metaphor to take and run in that direction. There are so many things that I would apply that way. Interesting. I think it's really smart for a lot of artists to leave so much room for your audience to take from it.
Not to be Vinny DiGeronimo, but who you all should go out, check out his amazing singles like Boyfriend. I love this guy. He's so fucking musically talented. He's so handsome. And you can check out all of his music anywhere. But oh gosh, I completely forgot why I was bringing. He said something funny. What were we just talking about 1 second ago? I got so excited that I'm going to be able to tell him to come look at this episode. KEVO, can you please remind me your previous point? I'm so sorry. See, yeah, no, you've lost it too. This is terrible.
I was waiting for your point. I thought you had something. I was being.
I do, and I just don't remember it. I'm so sorry. I've had a really long week.
Yeah, no. And this, again, we're all thrown for a loop with this.
Paula Cole, thank you. So,
yeah.
Vinny is the world's, as far as I know, biggest Paula Cole fan, in addition to being a brilliant singer-songwriter. Again, please go check out his amazing... Oh, you know what? Kevo, would you mind posting a link to Vinny's music as Andrew requests in the chat? He is a huge Paula Cole fan, has even gotten to sing with him. I'm sorry, has even gotten to sing with her. He's, such an accomplished fan. And one of the things is I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, guys. I was so embarrassed that I forgot the point. Now I just broadcast over. Evolve Daily. Paula Cole did not print lyrics to her first several albums because she wanted whatever you thought the lyrics were to be what the lyrics were for you, and to let the lyrics you heard take you on your own journey. And I think there's something uniquely expressive about that, uniquely complete about that in and of itself. When somebody says, no, these are my lyrics, this is what I mean, there's a deeper meaning that you have to put in the effort to find. You have to put in the effort to discover what the person is saying outside of that. But when somebody says, experience the music yourself, how you do, I have no notes, it feels a little bit more personal. And while certainly Tori makes her lyrics available, she does hyper enforce that same idea of personalize the music to your own experience.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I knew where you were going as soon as you brought up the fact that Paula Cole didn't publish her actual lyrics. And it's even just like, oh, wow, she even went one step above. Because I remember that was kind of how I got into Tori Amos online fandom, was like using Ask Jeeves, because that's how long ago this was, to try and get Tori Amos lyrics. And more than that, because you could find the lyrics in the album, in the album insert, but I needed to know what she was talking about. I remember one of the very early ones was like, I need the entire download on this Mr. Jim situation, because it seems vaguely not okay. And I had a lot of questions, and I spent a lot of time trying to look up Tori Amos lyrics. And the thing I kept getting back was her being like, I don't know, what do you think it means? Like, I'm not actually trying to get into that with you. This album is about, X kind of trauma. I was trying to take my fire back from men, but like, no, this specific moment is not me yelling at Trent Reznor. Like, it took me a decade of listening to this person to be like, you need to get the fuck over it and just be an adult and accept your own interpretations. And like, that's literally what this person wants from you. Like, all you're saying is like, I want you to tell me what to think. And all she is saying is like, what I'm telling you to think is whatever you actually think. And it's something I've always appreciated. It took me a while to get to it, but, I'm excited because there's this whole album to kind of play around with. What the fuck is an insect ballet? I'm going to make it up for myself.
It's part of where I feel like Tori has always asked. Oh, and Vinny says thank you. It's part of where this whole thing is such an exciting experiment, in part because one of the things that I can't stop thinking about is age affects what you think is grandeur, right? There is this identity that goes with a record for people for whom the idea that more than a single made you real, right? A single is a single. Great job. Like, anybody can fuck you good once, but can they make you come like 10 times? That's a different thing. That's an album. Right. And
you Jesus.
What?
It doesn't make you Jesus.
Yeah, it doesn't make you Jesus. Exactly. And so there's this idea that an album for people of Tori's generation, and I mean, going back to Sgt. Pepper's and Phone, like, an album is the thing. If you can construct an album, you're a wizard, Harry. And you get to this point, though, where Billie Eilish pre-sold 1 million records before she even had an album. You know what I mean? And so like you hit a point where the iterative idea of superstar doesn't really need a record. They just need a single. They just need a song. They don't need an album. And Tori was of this mental camp that when the album came out in the middle of October, she had to change over her Web 1.0 website to be completely that new album. And it took months of promotion and months of getting the word out and doing interviews and debuting the single and getting the single. If you purchased the album on iTunes 2 months in advance, you got the single and you got a video and you got a featurette and you got the album and you got the so much. This got no fanfare. The sacrifice of the artifice, the pomp that she associated with this experience asks me to consider if Tori Amos has outgrown who we think she is. Is she more evolutionary as the music on this record is? I'm inclined to believe she's ready for whatever comes next by her recent dig into her catalog, whether it was diving deeper live, which now they're doing more printings of and more fucking colors. This is near egregious what you got. I see everybody's got things.
I feel like we've gotten so far away from the era of extras, though. Anytime someone brings that up, I always think of how much they fell by the wayside for Doctor Who. Even now that Russell T Davies is back to make it great again. Like, they used to do so many mini-sodes and, like, all these little things, and they haven't done those in a million years. And unless it's a commercial or it's cobbled together from deleted scenes, they just don't do stuff like that anymore. And it's sad. I miss it, you know, but that's what I always think when you talk about that era of like, yeah, there were a whole bunch of things they did for it. Now it's just, you know, whatever.
TK, I saw you also had your finger. Oh no, I'm so sorry. So part of where I am, I guess I'm channeling some uncertainty here, right? Something I was thinking about when I was working on this episode, and I don't want to give too much away, but I'm going to start writing 1,000 things about this. But how often have we heard artist X deleted album Y because thing? There is that famous legend that there is a record that comes between Dedicated and The Loneliest Time that is super disco. And she destroyed it. Carly Rae Jepsen, the Tori Amos of pop music, obviously. She destroyed the record, but I'm sorry, but I said Loneliest Time. Yeah, Loneliest Time is the first one. Loveliest is second, right? Loveliest Time has some disco influence on it that cannot be minced. I think the best song on
Loneliest Time too. Like Loneliest Time is a disco song, except I'm not gonna say something mean about Rufus Wainwright today. Anyway, there's disco on that. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Rufus also has a really lovely cover of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm going to assume because he does everything Judy.
Yeah.
I'm also going to not say something rude about Rufus now.
We're nice.
Man, we're being nice faggots today.
I'm gonna start my Elliott Smith podcast later. So take that, Rufus. And so the thing that this record introduces is the idea that one of two things is gonna happen, right? Because like, what does it mean when an artist starts releasing nonsense records, right? It's either you are at the height of your game. You know, it's that thing that Entertainment Weekly once called the Friends Buffy syndrome. You're either the number one show in the world and you can get away with everything because it doesn't matter what the critics think of you. You're the number one show in the fucking world. Or you are the number one critical show in the world and no one fucking watches you. So it actually doesn't matter what you do because no one's going to be paying attention to it except the critics who are just going to think it's brilliant. And so like, you wind up in this position where everything is a little bit. I remember the point that I didn't make. Now I was going to say something about artists. Okay, so rewinding. So many things to say because we got stuck on Rufus. I want to know about the record that Tori didn't release instead of Ocean to Ocean because it was too dark, because it was too emotional. It's about the only time she's mentioned that there was a record's worth of music that was scrapped in favor of going with something a little bit different, maybe toward the last second. How often we've heard that a record changed significantly just before release where several things became B-sides. So I'm thinking about worlds where the records that they didn't go with got released instead, and how many of those might have been just as successful. Or like if you're like a Ray of Light fan, the Madonna demos for Ray of Light, there's like 5 other songs that were never on Ray of Light that are just as incredible as every song that made it. Like Gone, Gone, Gone for one, just like as an example. But with Tori, this is such a moment because when somebody does do a record like this, it's like I was saying, because now I've made all my points. It's like somebody like a Christina Aguilera who, after that first record, had a demos record, a remix record, a Christmas record, a Spanish language record, everything but a second fucking record.
Right.
Or it's Jewel doing children's records right before she became the host of Platinum Hit and then the cashier at Kroger's. So I wonder what Tori Amos's next move is going to be, because she's done everything but the official remix record. She's literally done everything but. So, I mean, we are talking about a person. She's done everything but to the point where we could call her the anal queen. This is just a point where I am very curious about her next step.
I mean, I will say the thing I feel like she hasn't done is the American Songbook or jazz standards, old pop songs. And again, like those remain my favorites. Nightingale Cried in Berkeley Square, You Belong to Me, Murder, She Said. Even Mano de Carnaval from Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, which is one of my favorite.
Yeah, just if you're going to go look that one up, it is oddly named, I think, Dark Carnival.
It's just called Carnival.
Oh, just Carnival?
Yeah, but it's the cover of the song Mano de Carnaval from the movie Black Orpheus. One of my favorite movies, one of my favorite songs, one of my favorite Tori songs, absolutely my favorite Tori cover. But I just, she's got one. I've always been surprised because she's done a covers record, obviously. So kind of, yeah, she even has done the classics because those covers records are all classic songs. They're just not the classics that I'm talking about. She really has done it all. I do think I'm so like this. I don't want to turn this into a whole conversation because it would go forever and we would just be speculating because we have no idea. But I was thinking a lot about like, what are the financials on the promotion for this stuff for her? What does it cost? Because she owns her own studio. They do have to pay Marcel, obviously, but she and Mark own the business together. I assume they pay Mark too, but like there's some nebulousness there. I would be so curious to know what it costs for them to produce songs, and then what that return on investment needs to look like and what needs to happen. Just because, again, like I'm just thinking about this drop. This just, yesterday we didn't think we were getting anything, and today, I mean, I'm kind of out of this community. I do check on the subreddit a little bit. Those people are not quite my people, but at least their reaction is somewhat like a public reaction. Everybody seems to really love it. I know we really love it. I'm ready to order a record. I'd be so curious to know about, like, I'd be fine if she did this 2 or 3 more times. Just drop 37 minutes out of nowhere, especially if it was coming a little more frequently. But I also love a Tori Amos album cycle.
And I just love that she's able to do that in this day and age. Something that I was lamenting was the fact that there is just no element of surprise anymore because of how LinkedIn, everyone is to entertainment news. I assume no one here cares about spoilers for the CBS show Watson. No. But our mom will be very excited because we know who was cast as Moriarty, someone that we love. What?
I say, just don't ask again, sainted though she be. I mean, really, Trent Reznor of synthesizers, my mother is, but do not ask my mother about her rage at Matlock, right?
She's very mad at Matlock, but she's currently on board with Watson still, and Moriarty is cast as Randall Park. Super cool and exciting to know, but if that was going to be a twist, tough, because that's not how entertainment news works, and the fact that she's able to drop something like this in this way, that's very bold and very cool.
And, you know, it's where I want her to, you know, it's something TK and I have talked about a lot, where there's mythos, right? And it's something where, like, Tori had mythos for so long that she decided to capitalize on it, and now there's less mythos because she's put so much of it out there. I think sometimes about the fact that there's this interview from a trillion years ago, back for all you hear in my head girlies, where she talks about how she got real drunk and recorded Love is a Battlefield. I am shrugging because who hasn't gotten real drunk and recorded Love is a Battlefield? But she says that if Mark ever releases it, she will divorce him. And obviously she is just being funny and joking because Mark gets too many royalties from guitar work to ever divorce him. So I thought we said we weren't going to say mean things about Rufus. So you
had to direct that energy somewhere else.
Somewhere. And
Mark can take it.
That's she, gosh, man, we all laugh so much. But so Tori has this humongous, like, I can't even begin to describe the quality of the library back catalog, whether it's unreleased recordings, alternate versions. I don't think it takes a lot to find a Tori fan who thinks that the Rookery ending, that's all I have to say. I don't have to say anything else. I'm going to literally just say the Rookery ending is one of the greatest things she released in the last 25 years. It is 1 minute and 30 seconds that is an alternate ending to a song that's 6 minutes long.
I cry every time I listen to it.
I literally sob, and like I built an entire. I think In the Springtime of His Voodoo is so the perfect song. I believe I've modeled like 35 songs about. I've written musicals in the style of, like, truly. I think In the Springtime of His Voodoo is like a course unto itself, and that Rookery ending explores all of the ideas that the record allows you to experience. It allows you to think of this song in new ways, and you can project this other sense of canon into it. Because, standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona, and I'm quite sure we're in the wrong song. Like, that's such a Tori moment. That's like such a famous thing in the fandom. Got an Angry Snatch Girls, you know what I mean? I'm right there for the minute. Like, this song in particular, every lyric is a meme, and everybody's got a favorite bootleg where she did the lyrics slightly different and hit the notes differently, and then to have this alternate ending, the Rookery ending. It's so transformed canon for this song. I call it canon. It's so transformed canon for this song that I think about the maybe not my favorite demo for A Sort of Fairy Tale, where she says, "I didn't know we could break so well and clean," instead. And it's not my favorite, but I love it. You know, you brought up Toodles Mr. Jim. When Trent Lott was being kicked out after centenarian racist nonsense bastard with a child of mixed race, Strom Thurmond, after Strom Thurmond died, so nothing held Trent Lott in place but his own plastic surgery by Trent. when Tori felt that exact way, she channeled it into a performance of Toodles Mr. Jim that she called Toodles Mr. Lot. And Here in My Head had it the next morning. And that became part of the canon. How many of us, when we sing Caught a Light Sneeze, end it with, I hurt myself today, oh God, you never could, you never did, you're full of shit. And
never did.
How many recordings are there in that back catalog that would inspire that same level of fandom? How many bootlegs are there in that back catalog? You know, you say, what does it take for her to record and release 37 minutes? I want to know what it takes for her just to release it. And I want to know how many from the Purple Vault records we can get from Tori Amos before Drag Race is on in 23 minutes.
Yeah, I mean that yes, and I like that deadline in particular because there's a bunch of other deadlines we're not saying or talking about, and I think that's a good thing. But part of me really wonders, like, is this a nest egg to leave for Tosh and for the family? Because for years her parent, I think her father, well, he's probably very retired, but for years her parents were her publishers. That was their job in the company, and I imagine other family members who might wish to can be involved. But like we do have some inkling that basically every performance is recorded and has been for quite some time. And you and I have talked about, like, we would pay $20 a month for access to just even streaming that, not even to download it. I pay a lot for the albums to be able to download them and keep them too, but like that would be some huge revenue just releasing that catalog. And that's all stored. Again, there's probably an insane catalog of recorded material. What does it take to release that? Yeah, I really don't know the answer. But this at least gives me the hope of, like, what feels from our side like a release on a whim is possible. I don't know what it was for them, and I don't know what the thinking was of doing this really rapid drop. But I hope they're getting cool response and information out of it, and it leads to more out of the box thinking.
I mean, not to be maudlin, but I imagine some amount of when it will be released is, if and when she passes. I say if, she might turn into a cyborg, who knows? But, something that I think of is when we did the Celine Dion documentary and the way that she preserves all of her own, things. And, we were talking the other day about The Price is Right, and NICO was telling me about how Drew Carey, when people come on the show with custom made things, he frequently, wants one of his own for posterity because he loves the program. And, I imagine these things, there is an intention with them. And if she isn't releasing it now, it's probably because there might still be things she wants to do with it. And once she is fully, I'm good, then we'll start seeing more stuff like that.
Well, an angel's face is tricky to wear constantly, and so I think we should wrap this. KEVO, I would love to know your favorite thing about this record so far, your favorite Tori Amos lyric. I'm sorry, favorite Tori Amos song. Sorry. And where can everybody find you?
My favorite thing about this record so far, I liked it's Day to Night, or is Day and Night? I like that one. I like the Insect one. I like the final one. I like the Americana one, and that's 4 out of 9 immediately off the bat. So I really love how many bangers there are on this. That's really cool. Favorite Tori song in general, there's so many. I think one that is coming to mind today is Big Wheel, because it reminds me of that other one from the album today. And she does so many great things. I loved Andrew's comment earlier that she either needs to be a judge or there needs to be a Tori Amos musical challenge on RuPaul's Drag Race. A challenge, not a rusical. And I think that the question I'm going to posit to everyone for the opening of our Drag Race coverage on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is what RuPaul song would you want Tori Amos to cover? So I'm giving everyone advanced notice of that and advanced time to think about that. And if you have any thoughts, you can hit me up on the socials at KEVO Really. That's KEVO
TK, I would love to know your favorite thing about this record, your favorite Tori song, and where everybody can find you. Also, Kevo, thank you so much. Loving it, doing your judo and your finery.
Do you know my favorite Tori song?
No, I'm the worst.
I was just no. I was just I don't know yours either. I was just curious. I might know yours. My favorite thing about this record is the horns. Love me some horns. And there's a couple great moments. It's not just Spike's Lament, which I do. That's my favorite song on here. And I do love it. But there's a couple other horns moments, and I really love them. My favorite Tori Amos song is Twinkle. And if you would like to discuss that or anything else with me, you just find me on Blue Sky at TK Accidental. NICO, favorite thing, favorite song. Where did they find you? Do you, like Tori, make music, and where did they find that? Let's hear all the questions the people want to know.
I think my favorite thing about this record, other than TK's marvelous introduction, I put a spell on you and now you're mine. Hocus pocus. Anyway, when Bette Midler isn't saying stupid things, she is a font of strength for me.
Gay people, you're next. Greatest Bette moment of all time.
Now she's come back out again, probably. So we'll see.
She is saying so many positive things about her time in Hello Dolly, and I just still think Bernadette was a little better. So anyway, I said that to a friend of mine who is a card-carrying actor friend, and he was like, "I thought so."
Which one had Victor Garber?
Yeah, no. Which one had Victor Garber? Bernadette. David Hyde Pierce. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Patty. No. Oh my God. Patty's too fat. I'm sorry. Bette had Victor.
Cola Scola. He was the best ever Vandergelder. Anyway.
Matthew, Jesus Christ. So my favorite thing about this record is how exploratory it is. One of the things that I think that Tori does so well is gets into a mood, gets into a vibe. You can really hear it. A lot of bootlegs. She gets into this like hits, and I just tune me out if you want. But she gets into this place where she just loves this like flat five, and I didn't mean to go Christopher Lloyd in Roger Rabbit. I'm so sorry. She gets into this flat five. And she channels this ninth into the 11th. She rambles into the 13th, and then she kind of comes back for the actual song, and she hits the song really hard, and it's really good. And you can hear it over and over again. And like so many of the improvs do the same thing in a cool way. It's so great to hear one artist explore one thing. The way every song in Sweeney Todd sounds like the same idea in a very different way than every song in Next to Normal sound like very different ideas. But they're still one show, right? Tori gets really into the Sweeney Todd. This record feels like a Next to Normal. It feels like she explores a lot more avenues of musical identity. And I wonder how much, Andrea, that is beautiful, exploratory. One of the things I wonder is how much that is born of having a Studio One PreSonus subscription and just having the opportunity to click the beep boops and just discover how fun it is to click the fucking beep boops. I don't know that I think every digital artist is brilliant, but I know that every one of them is famous when they're famous because they're willing to hit the buttons first. And this was an example of Tori being really willing to hit the buttons first. That is what I loved here. Favorite Tori song of all time. It's Caudalite Sneeze. I'm pretty basic. It's my favorite thing in the entire world is just to hit that yes. And I do it the same way every time. There's a couple of videos of me. There's one on YouTube. There's one on Instagram. And I do the yes and bring it up into the final buildings every time. I just do the studios at 54 performance. If you want to check me out, you can check me out at NICO Action, NICOACTION. If you want to check out my music, it's NICOACTION MUSIC. Hoping you guys will be able to check out some live stuff in the very near future. You guys are going to be able to check us out as a group down in the Delmarva ourselves, because we're going to be down at AwesomeCon, one of my absolute favorite experiences in the entire world with some of my favorite people. We're going to be there with Amanda Martini, Jess Krause, like some of my fave people. So definitely check us out at AwesomeCon. We'll have more information up soon. But for the channel, X is for show, X is for podcast, HTML, that's Husbands Talking More or Less. Like, comment, subscribe, and then 3 favors you guys can do for yourselves. Number 1, stay safe. Number 2, evolve daily. Number 3, serve breakfast every hour. It could save the world. And we'll see you.